This afternoon we will have two events. Let's start from the first session now. We are very delighted to have Lynne Leblanc here. He is a successful young man in public service in Massachusetts, an important and shining star as Asian American politician. Lynne Leblanc is currently serving his second term on the Kansas City Council, where he has been a strong leader in economic development, community building, and regional cooperation. In addition to being the youngest member of the Kansas City Council, Chang is the first current enrolled student to be elected to the council, as well as the first Asian American. He was a commissioner on Governor Patrick's Asian American Commission and is the Massachusetts State Chair of the Democratic Municipal Officials. He is also a 2012 recipient of an Eisenhower Fellowship and a partner of the Truman National Security Project. Let's welcome Lynne.
Thank you. It's great to see so many of you taking part in this democratic process. And it's really great to be back here in Newton. I feel like I come here so often, I should probably just get a second home here. It's really a great community. It's great the community that you've built here in this school. Just wanted to come here to support my friend Wen Hua in his bid to become a charter commissioner here in Newton. You know, so often, please come up. I'm one of only a handful of Asian Americans across the Commonwealth who are in elected office right now, and there are way, way, way too few of us. Massachusetts, if you look at where immigrants are coming from, and you look at a map of the entire country that says for each state where immigrants are coming from, Massachusetts is the only state where the majority of immigrants are coming from Asia. You know, and it's incumbent upon us here to be proud of that and to help lay the groundwork for them to come in and find homes here in the Commonwealth, which I think we can do. You know, I was here in Newton. I had the pleasure of listening to Professor Watanabe at a August Moon celebration. I forget what celebration it was, but he talked about the fact that Asian Americans in this country are constantly fighting against stereotypes, and he talked about the fact that back in Asia, there are differences between, you know, the North and the South, China versus Taiwan, Japan, and there are centuries-old divisions. But once we get here, we're all seen as Asian Americans. And Asian Americans are too often thought that, oh, we're all intelligent, we're all very successful. You know, just look at Chinatown to recognize that there are some Asian Americans who are really struggling. You know, it's always thought that Asian Americans, while we're great workers, are not great leaders. And so we need people like Wen Hua to step up, and when they do, we need to be there to support them. We need to be there to volunteer on their campaigns, to donate to their campaigns, to make sure that they get into elected office, because he brings a wealth of experience. He brings a sensibility which would add a lot to the Charter Commission or to whatever office he decided to run for. And given that he's willing to put his time, his name on the line, as an Asian American community, we need to be there to support him. Because we need leaders like him to prove to the community at large that Asian Americans aren't just intelligent, we're not just great workers, we are great leaders for the entire community. And I believe that Wen Hua is going to do that for Newton, and that's why I want to come out here and support him today. And I'm asking all of you to join me in supporting him as well. So let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much.
I'll be very brief. Essentially, if there's only one thing I can ask of you is to take out your phone and put November 3rd as the date to vote. Go out and vote. That's something that every one of us, maybe you're already doing, but maybe you have not. But this is part of being American. So with that, I want to say this is 2:30. This is almost the start of the the debate of the Ward 2 Aldermen. And this is a very interesting debate, and I, for one, am highly interested in hearing what they have to say. So thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Anping Shen. I used to take this place as my stage. I was the founding board chair of Newton Chinese Language School. That was about 15 years ago. So I miss this place. So I'm happy to be here once again. So happy to have this event. And I want to tell you two stories very quickly to show it's important. First of all, I would like to acknowledge Susan Albright. And she was, at that time, the Newton School Committee Chair. And we were looking for our superintendent. And Susan was very nice to invite me to join that superintendent search committee because I was principal of Newton Chinese Language School here. And I really appreciate that. This is a wonderful story. We appreciate Newton's support. But we also want to contribute to this community, to this wonderful city, which I'm proudly call my hometown here. I've been here more than 25 years, so I love to call this my hometown. Secondly, I could tell another story. Also about 15, 20 years ago, I heard Newton School Committee debate. And one school committee said, hey, we had a budget problem, too many classes. Some classes do not have many students. For example, a Chinese class, only a few students. And I was watching the TV. I said, this is a BS. What's the problem here? If you're talking about some classes do not have enough students, what about other classes? Why you point out only Chinese class? I wrote a letter to all school committee members. I said, you have to do better work. You give me the data. And then some school committee members contact me, say, Anping, we heard that story, we do not like it. But unfortunately, if some person with Chinese Asian background in there, do you think that school committee member will say something like that? So we have to get involved. We have to raise our voice. And I believe we can say our Asian community, our Chinese community, been doing a wonderful job here. I have two kids. One son graduated from Newton North, and he was selected as graduation speaker. And that's very proud. And he was also the national gymnastics team member. I think he made a wonderful contribution to Newton School Committee, or to Newton School System. But also I acknowledge Newton School System, Newton City are wonderful places, are wonderful to all of us, so we need to work together. I'm so happy Wenhua stand up and said, I want to get involved. I have to say, I was struggling whether I should get involved, but I never made this final decision. So let's cheer for Wenhua and cheer for all the members who come here to give us a chance to let us hear what their perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynne, and thank you, Anping. And hope all of you can remember the date, November 3rd. That's the voting date for Wenhua as well as all other Alderman at large candidates. Okay, so now let's start Newton Ward 2 Alderman at large candidate debate. Today I will be the moderator here. So I would like to first welcome all the 4 candidates to the Newton Language School. We also have distinguished guests joining the audience today. Ward 1 Alderman Alison Larry, Ward 2 Alderman Emily Norton, and Ward 3 Alderman at large Jen Cole, Ward 3 Alderman at large candidate Julia Malaki, and Ward 5 Alderman at large candidate Chris Pitts. and Ward 5 Alderman at Large, Brian Yates. And welcome to our school. Next, I would like to give the stage to our chairman of the board of Newton Chinese Language School, Dr. Yongqi Deng. Dr. Deng has devoting his passion and work to the Newton Chinese Language School for a number of years. He has served the principal and the parent committee chair prior to the current position of chairman. Now, Dr. Deng.
Good afternoon, all the Alderman Kenny, parents and friends. Thank you very much for coming to this forum. On behalf of Newton Chinese Language School, we want to welcome all of you coming to here. Thank you. Newton Chinese Language School is the largest Chinese school in Boston, with 56 years of history. We have 3 missions. Vision number one is to provide education for Chinese teachers. Number 2, to support the engagement of our Chinese cultural diversity and the mutual appreciation with the local culture. Number 3, I really want to read it, to promote and engage in civil activities at a different level, including government agencies, public school, and community-based organization to strengthen our communication and the participation of a local Chinese community in mainstream society. So that's the purpose why we have this forum here. We want to encourage our parents, all our students to participate in the main society. As everybody said here, we want to participate in the decision process of how we choose our local leader, and then what is the policy to make our city to be the better. So here I would like to say we really appreciate this opportunity for you to come here to discuss the important issue of the city of Newton with our parents here. And we will also be delighted to have this opportunity to serve as a platform to bridge the connection between the local government and our parents. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time to be here. Good luck, Mr. Brown. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Deng. So a few words about the position of Newton Ward 2 Alderman at Large seats. In Newton, 2 Aldermen at Large and 1 Alderman serve each of the 8 wards. They are part of the 24-person board of the Aldermen as the legislative branch of the Newton municipal government. Aldermen are elected every 2 years. The Ward 2 Aldermen at Large must live in Ward 2, but are elected by all the voters of Newton. The top 2 vote getters on November 3rd by the voters will become the Ward 2 Aldermen at Large. We will begin to meet the candidates for Ward 2 Aldermen at Large now. So let me briefly introduce each of the candidates, followed by ballot order. Lynne Leblanc. And her family has been living in Newton for 15 years. Lynne has been serving in various schools and educational organizations in Newton. She works as an adjunct lecturer in the classic department at the UMass Boston. Marcia Johnson is currently Ward 2 Alderman at Large. She has been a Newton resident for more than 30 years, and she is an active member in Newton Democratic City Committee and a teacher at several schools in Newton. She works as a senior director of human resources for a biopharmaceutical outsourcing company. Jacob Auchincloss. He was born and educated in Newton. He was a captain in the Marine who commanded infantry and special operations in Afghanistan and Taliban. He has worked for both Governor Patrick and Governor Baker. A graduate from Harvard, Jake is now attending MIT for MBA. Susan Albright is serving for a 6th term as an Alderman. She has been serving as the Vice Chair and Chair of the School Committee of Newton for 8 years. Susan works at Tufts University, where she won several awards, including Change Agent Award issued by Tufts University. Okay, now let me briefly explain the format of the debate. We will start with the opening ceremony for each of the candidates, limited to 3 minutes. You will see the timer over there, so you can do time remaining. Question will be addressed to all candidates after the opening ceremony from all of us. And the time will be 1.5 minutes for each question. And also the closing statement will be 1.5 minutes as well. Okay, now is the time to start with Lynne. Lynne, please.
The Newton Chinese Language School, to Mr. Yong Ki-Day, and for extending the invitation, and to all of you for staying to listen. I'm asking for your vote on November 3rd, and I'm running because I love Newton. My family moved here 15 years ago, probably for the same reason you were here. The open spaces, the suburban environment close to Boston, friendly neighborhoods, and the great schools. My son took Chinese here. That's how I know a little bit. My sons are graduates of the Newton Public Schools, where I volunteered extensively, including 4 years as Newton North PTO co-president. Though I love Newton, I understand that we have some serious challenges, and I'm running because I think we need to address those challenges. There are 2 challenges in particular that I think we need to pay attention to. The first one is development. The incumbents support large, high-density residential development in all of our villages that will radically and fundamentally change Newton. I instead prefer a balanced approach to development that preserves the unique character of our individual villages, that strives to keep Newton a city for residents of all ages and all income levels, that keeps our walkable neighborhood schools as the best model, and that minimizes traffic and congestion, which is so prevalent in Newton right now. The second challenge is our fiscal health. We owe almost $1 billion in unpaid pension and healthcare liabilities. That is a tremendous amount of money in Newton alone. And this debt has grown significantly since the incumbents have been in office. If we want to fund our schools, our services, our infrastructure, we must not pass off the debt any longer to our children, to the future. We must address the problem head on. One of my incumbents has suggested that we pay for this obligation with an override for more taxes. I disagree. I think we should do everything we can to increase revenues and cut costs before we even think about asking people to vote for more taxes. This is an important election in Newton, and this year you have a choice. I am a leader committed to keeping us the Garden City, who will work hard to fund our schools, our city services, and our infrastructure. I am a leader who is willing to think independently and not be a rubber stamp for failed policies the incumbents have promoted. Please vote for me, Lynne Leblanc, on November 3rd. Roshi.
Marcia, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, great, thank you. Thank you to the Newton Chinese Language School for having us here. It's been a long time since I've been at Day Middle School, where both my children went here a long time ago. I oftentimes said that it takes a community to raise an alderman, because I've learned so much about this community by being on the front lines of local issues that are important to you, the residents, the small smart and consistent with our city's values. Despite what others may say, I strongly believe that it is critical to diversify our housing stock by creating more intergenerational and affordable housing units where those in differing socioeconomic levels can live together as a community. This will go a long way in creation of a healthier community and one with our aligned values. There is more to do on zoning reform. We must leverage our unique village character and centers while preserving quality of the neighborhoods, especially where commercial areas meet residential. Ultimately, we want ordinances to be simple, clear, and predictable for those who want to build or renovate their home or business. Newton is thriving, and yet there is more work to do. Newton needs experienced leaders to move forward and ensure that we don't simply say and proceed as everything is just fine the way it is. I ask that you please vote for me, Marcia Johnson, on Tuesday, November 3rd. A vote for me, Marcia Johnson, is a vote for moving Newton forward.
Thank you to Mr. Deng, Mr. Xia, and Mr. Zhang, my friend, for hosting this event, and to the parents of the Newton Chinese School for attending. This forum is, I think, a hallmark whose importance cannot just be measured by the ward to race. The Asian American community in Newton, now more than 4,000 households strong, is flexing its political muscles, and I welcome that. Newton has a long and proud tradition of ethnic diversity. We have been made wiser, wealthier, and a more interesting city because of the vigorous participation of groups like African Americans, Jews, Russians, to name just three, all of whom we welcomed long before the rest of the United States embraced them in civic life. Diversity makes us stronger as a city. I have spoken with many Chinese households at their doorstep this year, because I believe that listening is the most important act of public service. Listening to voters, to experts, to deeply held opinions, and to widely credited facts. And my campaign for Alderman at Large has reached more voters one-on-one than any campaign for the board in recent memory. By canvassing more than 13,000 homes, I have been able to distill what is important to the Newton electorate. Newton voters want better roads and sidewalks, and drawing on my research into municipal best practices at the Harvard Kennedy School, infrastructure will be my signature issue. Newton voters want zoning that codes for walkable villages with predictable, consistent scale and character. Walkability and predictability will be my two guideposts going forward. And always, Newton voters, especially the Chinese community, which has invested so much of your own resources into education, want superb schools. As a product of those schools, I can assure you they will never want your support on my watch. I went to Pierce, Day, and Newton North, and I consider it one of the great privileges of my life to attend public schools. These schools prepared me not only for the academic rigor of Harvard and MIT, but also for public service. Service to the nation as a Marine officer who commanded infantry in Afghanistan. Service to the Commonwealth as a member of the Governor's Better Government Transition Committee. And now, with your support, service to my hometown as an Alderman at Large. I ask for your vote on November 3rd, and I pledge to continue listening as I serve. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much to the Chinese School for inviting us to come and speak to you and having this opportunity to discuss the important issues in Newton. So I think Newton is a great city. I want to work with you, and I want to work with my colleagues in government to build Newton that is financially stable, has strong schools, good roads, modern buildings that are sustainable, and is welcoming to all who want to live here. I know and love our city, having grown up here and returned to raise my family. I bring a wealth of knowledge and creative ideas to every job I've done. I've been a parent activist. I've been the Cabot PTO co-president. And as Anping said, I've been chair and member of the Newton School Committee. And now for the past 6 terms, I've been on the Board of Aldermen as Alderman at Large from Ward 2. On the board, I've worked on lots of quality of life issues, such as burying the wires that mar the beauty of our streets, such as advocating for parking meters, smart parking meters, so we don't have to carry quarters around everywhere, such as having off-leash dog areas, and other quality of life issues. I've worked on bricks and mortar issues, such as modernizing our buildings, and I've worked on financial and land use issues, such as reviewing commercial projects that could have a favorable impact on our real estate tax base. I know how important it is for you in the Chinese language school to study cultural and religious heritage, because my parents moved to Newton and sent my brothers and I to Hebrew school for the same purpose. So this is a very important aspect of your lives, and I well understand that. I want to speak for a moment in my last remarks about the need for housing, which one of my opponents has spoken of. In the tab this past week, there was an editorial that said, we have enough poor people in Newton. Newton has plenty of poor people. We don't need to prove that. So now all the poor people can go live somewhere else. You go read it in the tab, you'll see it for yourself. And this person who wrote this editorial is supporting my candidate very strongly and making her candidacy very strong. I feel like Newton needs housing for seniors. We need to respect the seniors who've lived in Newton and given the taxes in Newton all their lives, remained here. We need to provide them a place to downsize. We need a place for the grandparents. We need a place for the teachers and the workers and the firemen. We need them to be able to live with us here in this city. And we need workforce housing for middle-income people. And we don't have enough of this. The waiting lists for affordable housing are very long. And I hope that you'll join me and elect me in November 3rd so that we can have the kinds of housing we need in this city. Thank you.
Thank you for all the candidates for the informative opening statements. And then now is the time for the candidates to take questions from the audience. Please raise your hands if you have any questions to ask. We will have the staff member to hand the microphone to you. A reminder of the candidates, for each question, you will have up to 1 minute to answer.
Okay, I will start the first question. I believe many of you probably still have a lot of questions and still think about it. So I will start first. I have been living in Newton for 15 years. So I moved in Newton in the year 2000. One of the reasons attracted me to stay here and not moving to other places is the multicultural background. We have some people really coming from all over the world, living here. So we have great school here. And the one thing I realized, particularly after I getting involved into the community, I realized the support from the city of the multicultural activity seems like it's not enough, particularly financially it's not enough. So we feel like sometimes we want to run certain projects and we don't know where to apply for any financial support or any grant. So my question here is, if you elected, what's your plan for this to address the need of, like I say, for financially funding the cultural diversity of this city?
Okay, this question is for all the candidates, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like to start with Marcia, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think many of us, I did as well, came to Newton 32 years ago for the diverse background of folks here in Newton that I didn't have in New Hampshire. I just want to make one small correction. I taught school in New Hampshire, National New Hampshire, where I taught children with learning and language disabilities. I have not had the pleasure of teaching in Newton. So just a minor correction. I've been in human resources, various capacities over the years. I think it's very important, both at the government level as well as the city level, of people to support all of the different cultures that are available to us. And we do have a Department of Cultural Affairs headed up by Lynne Leblanc, and I know that they have done many different things for many different cultures in the city, and I would encourage still working with her in her very small department, and I would say that that is a small department from a funding perspective, so we can look at that. Also, there is a wonderful group called the Newton Cultural Alliance. I do hope that you're part of that. They have just purchased the Allen House over on Webster Street in West Newton, and that is a nonprofit that I support wholeheartedly with my time, my effort, and my money, and I encourage you to be part of that if not already. So I think there are multiple avenues, both through the government and through the private and nonprofit sectors, where there's an opportunity for all cultures to come together and do things for the city. I like that gong. Now, there used to be a show called Gong. Take it myself.
I will start. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I agree with a couple of points that Alderman Johnson made about looking at the budget for the government entity that actually oversees the cultural work here in Newton, and also the Newton Cultural Alliance as well. I would say one broader point about the ethnic diversity in Newton is that one of the best ways that we can appreciate the differences amongst us and the interesting insights that they yield is to enhance the walkability of the village centers. There's something called the bump factor in urban planning, where the more that you have people walking around outside of their vehicles in places, the more that they have happenstance interactions with one another, and the more lively village life can be. And that's really what I would look at, is not necessarily having an abundance of formal events that highlight our diversity, but letting it happen organically through walkable villages, where you get to take advantage and appreciate how many smart, interesting people we have from all around the world here in Newton.
So now it's my turn. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So there are a couple of things that come to mind. Marcia mentioned some of them. The Lynne Leblanc Office of Cultural Affairs runs programs constantly, and I think it's very important to work with that Office of Cultural Affairs, and I know you have in the past had events. The Newton Cultural Alliance is another place to get involved. Another group to get involved with is the Fair Housing Committee. There was just a meeting this week of the Fair Housing Committee in Newton talking about the recent Supreme Court ruling with respect to on the lack of fairness in certain communities with respect to housing. So that the Fair Housing Committee meets in City Hall. I'm not exactly sure which days, but it's usually on the calendar, and you can find out about that. Getting involved with boards and commissions. There's the environmental group. There's the high performance building group. There's the economic development group. I think that your membership, it would be great to have members from your membership. Involve yourselves in those committees, and that's the way from the grassroots up to make sure that your thoughts and your wishes and your desires are known throughout the city. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. There have been a lot of recommendations of where you might look for information. I have to say, one of the most important aspects to being an alderman is to listen to residents and communicate with residents. So the question becomes, how do we communicate with residents? I think aldermen should be proactive and seek out information from residents. In this way, we can distribute information so you know where to look. One model that I adhere to is Emily Norton, who's sitting in the audience. She's the Ward 2 Alderman, and she has established a email listserv And once a month, she sends out information that is in context. So it's not, for instance, just a meeting here or there at the time. It's context for why the meeting is taking place. And that is so useful to residents. And I think that is a wonderful model to follow. I think we can follow it by ward, and I think we can also have aldermen collaborate so that we have a citywide network of information so we can give you information so you don't have to always seek out information.
So I have a question for all four of you. So many of you have included repairing the road sidewalk as well as increasing the budget for schools in October's. So I'd like to know, what is your plan to get funds to support this? That's my first question. Second question is, what is your opinion and planning on balancing the green space and the parking space in the city?
Thank you. Those questions separately?
Yeah. So since it's two questions, we give like each candidate 3 minutes to answer. So we give each candidate 3 minutes to answer those two questions. Okay, let's start with the Jacob.
So I'll take the first part of your question first, which is plans for road and sidewalk improvement, which, as I mentioned in my opening, is a critical issue for me. Newton Department of Public Works, I don't think has done a good enough job of ensuring that our pavement condition index, which is a measure of how good our roads and sidewalks are, of ensuring that the pavement condition index reflects the caliber of our city. I've spoken with numerous cities who are considered best practice leaders in this field. I've spoken with civil engineering firms about this. I've spoken with our new Department of Public Works Commissioner, Jim McGonigal, who is going to institute several reforms that I would be a partner and advocate for on the board. Those reforms include using streetscape modeling so that we have a more quantitative way of measuring road status and also predicting where we should be funneling capital dollars. We need to coordinate better with utility companies so that we're not paving roads, just have them come by and tear it up especially. We need to, and this is probably the most important one, institute service level agreements with the Department of Public Works so that we can keep track on a monthly basis of what the timeline has been, if they've stayed on budget, and how strong the customer service has been. And most importantly, in terms of revenue enhancement side, we've got to expand our commercial property tax base here in the city. We do not get a very large amount of our property tax revenues from a commercial base here. What that means is that we put added stress on residential property taxpayers to fund higher quality roads and, of course, fantastic schools. Every square foot of commercial property yields on net $3 to every square foot of residential property. So it's a lucrative investment for us to bring in high-tech firms, biotech firms, to areas like the Charles River Mill District, to the N Squared corridor, and even to select locations on Washington Street. Now, the second part of your question was about balancing that with
green space and parking space.
Green space and parking space. So, one of the things that makes Newton attractive for the commercial sector is that we do offer more ample parking than places like Kendall Square and Seaport do. I spoke with a number of merchants from the Charles River Mill District, for example, who told me that having that walk right outside of those old mill buildings made it very easy for them to induce their employees to come work in Newton, where otherwise they might have been more comfortable working in Cambridge or Boston. So we need to maintain those parking spots as part of our comparative advantage. However, anytime you pave over green space in a city where land is as valuable as it is here, you're never going to get it back. And so we need to have the highest possible threshold for determining whether it's appropriate to actually give up green space, which so contributes to our quality of life, for parking.
Thank you, Jacob.
Okay, the first question. Revenue for the schools and for the roads.
Yes.
So I agree with Jake, the pavement index of our roads has been going down. That means that we have not been caring for our roads. Last year, we only paved 12 miles of roads, and that's not enough because we have 300 miles of roads in our city, and at 12 miles at a clip, it's not going to get there. The way to enhance our revenue is through commercial development in our commercial corridors. Over the past several years, we have added
a development at Riverside. We've added we just voted 2 office spaces, large office developments in Wells Avenue. And we have the street at Chestnut Hill Square on Route 9. So we're working at that, but not well enough and not fast enough. And I think if the city could enhance its business practices a bit more with permitting and so forth, I think it. And the professionals, the design professionals, had decided that we should put a 56-car parking lot in Cabot Park. Well, the neighbors didn't want that. And in fact, now the Parks and Recreation Commission has voted not to have that parking lot. Unfortunately, we now have the problem of where are we going to put the teachers, because the teachers drive to Newton from all over the state, and they need to park somewhere. So the balance of parking and open space is a tough one, but it can be managed. As a matter of fact, Cabot Park Village, which you may know is a retirement home right near the Cabot School, we've done a parking study, and they're actually going to offer to give probably in the neighborhood of 20 spaces for the teachers. So if you're a little creative, you can find the balance between the parking and the open space.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to stem from something Jake had to say. Actually, Newton has adopted a Complete Streets program. It is using a piece of software where they have evaluated the streets and given each street a rating, just like when you go to school and get a letter grade. And they use that to say if we fixed N number of streets, how much money would we need if we did N plus or N minus. Right now we allocate about $3 million. But as Susan Albright said, that doesn't get us very far very quickly. I also want to just make a mention that I'm sure all of you who drive to this area, or a good many of you, know that snow clearing has been an issue. Did you notice that last year? Yeah. Yes. And so with Jim McGonigal, our new head of the Department of Public Works, and Shane Mark, his Director of Operations, they are doing a full-blown plan, and they've started to share that with the Board of Aldermen so that we can be more predictable and consistent in how we work with citizens and communicate. Everything was reactive, and we are going to try to be more proactive. They learned a lot of lessons last year, so just wanted to plug that in. Also, there is a parking and transportation study that the Mayor's office is about to kick off, and that will help with balancing and looking at our streets and congestion and parks. Revenue. I'm not sure that I can add much more to what Susan and Jake have already said, commercial areas, but we need to focus them on the corridors where we have the structure for it. Needham Street, Route 9, some of Washington Street. So where Wells Office Park, where we are seeing that, up in this neck of the woods on Chapel and Bridge Street, where we have some old mill buildings and developing that. We need to build off the infrastructure that we have and realize the revenue from that. As for balancing green and parking space, I think you have seen that in this neighborhood, because this is a very popular and important aspect of education and community right here in this school building on these Sundays. So making sure that there's a balance where you all have a place to park, and the people who want to join in various soccer and baseball games at the Alderman field, as well as the Pheasant School, which now has developed a new whole soccer field, which adds a layer of complexity. And actually, several years ago, I worked with this school to limit the parking around the island, the park just out here, because of safety concerns of access of ambulances and fire equipment, and allow people to park in the Ed Center just up the street in the neighborhoods. So that is important, is to make sure people have public access to the streets. And we did this at Newton North with a tiger permit program, and we can do this here and wherever else we need, and I got the bond.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marcia.
It's really interesting. I have not hit as many houses as Jake has hit, but I have been walking around and I have visited thousands of homes and talked to many, many residents. And it's quite interesting because there are several concerns for Newton residents, but one of the first that always comes out is what about our streets and our sidewalks? So streets and sidewalks are something that absolutely need improvement. I have told this cartoon before, but I think it's worth repeating. There was a cartoon that was in the tab not too long ago. There is a young politician, and the young politician says, if you give me more money, I'll fix your roads and streets. In the next cartoon, he's a little bit older, a little bit of gray hair, and he says, if you give me more money, I will fix your roads and streets. And in the last cartoon, he's much older and says, if you give me more money, I will fix your roads and streets. And so the point of that cartoon is that we keep making promises and still our roads and streets are not fixed. I'd like to point out that what Jake has said about revenue is absolutely not key. And there are several key areas in Newton that we can think about bringing in commercial revenues. But I would also like to point out that the Wells Avenue Office Park was promoted as a place for residential development rather than commercial development by the two incumbents. And I think that is the absolute wrong thing to do, because we are built out, which gets to our second point, which is about green space in Newton. Newton is, as I said, built out, and we need to think about the combination of how we bring in commercial revenues and how we keep our green spaces. And this is a very difficult issue. There is a lot of pressure to build and build and build. One example I can give you is on Newtonville Avenue. There is a proposal to put in a U-Haul storage unit, and that has some very positive aspects to it. It's low income, it's low impact, I should say. But one of the issues about that development is that the land is zoned for 78,000 square feet of buildable land, but they would like to extend that to 113,000 square feet. And what will happen if that special permit is given is that a huge stand of 100 old trees will be just cut down and a building will be put there. And I think it's essential in Newton to always weigh the balance. What is the balance between development and keeping our green spaces and keeping what residents would like Newton to be, the Garden City? Thank you.
I agree with you, all you guys. We need more money to do the work. And now I have a follow-up question. So, if you are elected or re-elected, would you have any plan? So, do you have any specific plan on growing the revenue for the city of Newton? Maybe on commercial space or other criteria? Start with,
Yes, I have some definite plans about how we can grow our economy, how we can grow our commercial revenues. I think there are three basic ways to do this. I think we need to enhance commercial revenues. We have key areas. We have Wells Avenue that has been mentioned. We can also work with the Charles Mill River District. We also have our villages, that we can enhance our villages and work to bring in businesses that bring in revenue to our village centers in a way that's pleasing to people who live around the villages. The second way we can increase our revenues is to think about payment in lieu of taxes. And payment in lieu of taxes basically means that a nonprofit who is exempt from taxes, as is right, and we do follow the law, does not have to pay taxes. I agree with that. However, one thing that must be understood about some nonprofits is that they have for-profit aspects. So for instance, Boston College has the arena, it has housing, and those are for-profit aspects to the colleges. And I think those are aspects that we could ask colleges to please contribute some amount of tax revenue, as the colleges absolutely use our services, our streets, our roads, our infrastructure. That's another way we can bring in revenue to the city.
So I just want to make one comment. Lynn mentioned about Wells Office Park and housing and commercial aspects. Actually, one of the reasons that we lost TripAdvisor to Needham, and Needham's eating our lunch, is we're not providing workforce housing. And this is for young people who have a place to live, don't have to get in a car, and things like that. So we need to look at mixing the housing and business. That is an opportunity to increase our housing opportunity as well as our commercial. So we need to keep that in mind. We cannot keep losing business to Needham. I would say that from an economic development perspective, the City of Newton has not done the building of relationships to the level that it is needed. If you look at our village centers, there are some that are thriving. I look at Alderman Leary from Ward 1. I love to walk through Nonantum. There are all kinds of shops that are thriving. Newtonville is not that same way. It is a city where you go and village where you go to do errands. So we need to develop better relationships to encourage businesses and encourage landowners to have a variety of businesses and not simply banks. I think the other thing is on pilots, payment in lieu of taxes. It is important to remember that Boston College has two campuses, basically. They're partly in Boston and partly in Newton. Boston is not part of what we call the Dover Amendment. Oh, sorry. Yes, just a minute. With the Dover Amendment, the religious and educational institutions get preference. They don't have to adhere to our ordinances the way the rest of us do. In Boston, they are not part of it. So when they develop things, they being Boston College, there is, they can do a deal. I don't want to make it sound like it's shady because it's all up and up around how they pay to the city of Boston that's not taxes. We do not have that same thing. A lot of discussions have been had with Boston College, but we also have services in lieu of taxes, and Boston College, Newton Wellesley Hospital, LaSalle College give us a lot of services, especially in the area of education and health. Thank you.
I recently spoke with one of the principal developers behind the Charles River Mill District. And the Charles River Mill District, for those of you unfamiliar with it, it's at the intersection of Waltham, Watertown, and Newton, and it's a thriving, high-tech area that was renovated from old mill buildings. And it's really been a resounding success. And I asked him, how do we duplicate this? How do we do this more and better? And I came away from that with really 2 points. The first is that it's hard. There's just not that many places in Newton where you can put Class A office space that people are going to be willing to come to. One is the Charles River Mill District, and we still have some areas there that we can continue to develop. One is the N-squared corridor, and then some isolated areas on Washington Street. But there's not a whole lot of developable land in Newton for commercial property, so we have to double down on what we can improve the work. And what we've seen with the areas that have worked, like with Mesh Challenge coming to Newton Corner, and with Charles River Mill District, and with the street, is that fundamentally it's about relationship building. And I agree with Alderman Johnson on that 100%. And that was the second point that the developer behind the Charles River Mill District brought up. It requires relationships across the private sector and the public sector. And that is a powerful quality that I will bring to the City Council. I'm the director of the MIT Entrepreneurship Competition. I've got a strong and deep network of venture capitalists, of attorneys, of corporate executives, of entrepreneurs, product managers, scientists, and engineers, all of whom I can tap into for insight and advantage as we explore recruiting more high-quality workers and more high-quality businesses here to Newton. It is all about relationships, and I have a lot of relationships across Greater Boston. I will be the biggest booster for Newton in the entire Greater Boston region.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've talked about our commercial corridors and the development that's recently happened in the past. We have on the Needham Street corridor what the Chamber of Commerce, the Newton and Needham group are calling the N-squared corridor, where we hope to have more technology landing there. We also have the area around the Marshalls Plaza. There's a whole development that's been on the books there, trying to get developed for many years. I think the administration, they hired an economic developer and Nancy Hyde, and she's done some good work, but I think more could be done, reflecting what Jake and Marcia have already said, in building the relationships with the business community to make it a business-friendly place to come. With respect to pilots, let me tell you that the city of Cambridge, which has the richest university in the world, and that would be Harvard, gets $2 million from Harvard University. So we get a couple of $100,000 from Boston College, and we are likely to extract a couple of $100,000 more. I'm not going to sneeze at a couple of $100,000, but a couple of $100,000 isn't going to get us out of our fiscal problems. So pilots is not the panacea to this problem. I would also like to reflect on the comment about Wells Avenue. Wells Avenue is an office park. Office parks are not the same. They do not have the same shine on them that they once had. We have just now approved 2 large office buildings in Wells Office Park. We have a problem over there. Anybody in this community that drove by the Wells Avenue Office Park entrance last winter knows that you could get caught for half an hour to 45 minutes in traffic over there because there's only one way in and one way out of that office park. And I want to tell you that the Metropolitan Area Planning Council reviewed the Wells Avenue Office Park for the City of Newton last year and proposed that it could be a place for mixed-use development. I don't know if that's the right place for mixed-use development or not, but the Metropolitan Area Council said it's worthwhile for us to explore that so that people can live, work, play, and stay in the same area. Thanks.
Thank you, Susan. Any other questions?
Yeah. We have 2 questions from the audience. Before I pass the question to our candidates, I just want to make a quick comment. We just discussed about the parking. So I want to really take this opportunity to thank all our audience. Because the presence of Chinese school here on Sunday, we have so many families coming here parking. We definitely occupy a lot of parking space, that's for sure. So I really want to thank the city, thank the Alderman who worked this out to resolve all the issues. A few weeks ago, Emily came here. Emily, please stand up. So we just... Yeah, we discussed the possibility. She gave us a lot of useful suggestions about the extra parking space for our parents and for our school. So definitely we appreciate the support in the past and looking forward to your support for our school in the future. So now we'll have the question. The parents who asked the question just left, so I will just ask her to ask you. The question here is, we all know in USA, the math and science of the middle school and high school, if you look at the studies, the ranking, we are behind the world, particularly behind the Asia, behind Europe. So I guess the one really important for you is to be a great educational system. So what's your plan here? Do you have what you think, what we should do to boost, to enhance our science and math education in our public system, education system?
This is an issue that I was talking about with school committee member Angela Pitter. Angela has been really a pioneer in trying to bring more rigorous use of technology and data to the public schools here in Newton. Now, I'm running for city council, I'm not running for the school committee, and I'm very respectful of the school committee's competencies over the school curriculum. I wouldn't want to interfere too deeply into there. I will say, though, that Newton should be a leader, as it has previously been a leader in American educational policy, about making STEM both better and earlier on in the educational pipeline. I see this at MIT. We are not graduating high school seniors who can compete at the university level in the hard sciences and in engineering. And like you said, we're going to get our lunch eaten because of it. Because other countries, both the Scandinavian countries, the East Asian countries, are doing a much better job of doing it. And not only are we not doing that, we're not bringing high-skilled visas to immigrants who want to come here and create jobs. I can't solve that problem as a Newton City Councilor, but it's just something I feel like I have to talk about on the stage because it is such an incredibly big blunder. In my capacity as a city councilor in Newton, there'd really be two things I'd want to advocate for school policy. One is early education. There are 3- and 4-year-olds here in Newton, more than 100, 150, who are not getting access to high-quality pre-kindergarten education. And that gives them a permanent handicap going forward in literacy and numeracy, in things that really feed into high-quality engineering and science skills. And the second is making our engineering and science curriculum at the elementary and middle school levels especially at a level of excellence. I think our high schools do a pretty good job of that so far. I think
at the corner of Washington and Walnut Street. It's commercial zoned, and the residents are not complaining that this is going to be developed into a commercial zone. What the residents are unhappy with is the developer would like to build as big as he can and build 6 floors with 150 units. The residents are saying that's too big for our neighborhood. This will increase the burden on our infrastructure, on our schools. Can we be more reasonable? So the balanced approach for me is thinking about how do we respect residents who have bought into their communities and have certain expectations in their communities.
So you raise a very interesting dilemma for aldermen. So aldermen are elected from the ward and from the city, and they are advocates. On the land use committee, we also serve as judges. And it's very difficult to be an advocate and a judge at the same time. We do our best at that. I think that Jake raises a very valid point. If the size of the board is reduced, and one of the things that could easily be given up is land use. Well, the board being responsible for land use causes this tension. And if we had a professional group, be it the Zoning Board of Appeals or the Planning Board, professionals in the area, where they aren't as influenced by, let's say, neighbors who are saying, you know, I don't want development here, and they may be have a more balanced approach between the desires and needs of the city, the desires and needs of the neighborhood, and the desires and profit margin for the developer. It could be easier if that were to happen. And it's probably not a bad idea to look into that very closely.
Thank you. So let's move on to the closing statement. So each of you will have up to 1.5 minutes, and then we can start with Susan.
So I want to thank my fellow debaters here tonight, and I want to thank all of you for listening and learning the differences between the candidates for this very important job. The first city council will have some challenging issues to face, and I would like to be able to bring my intelligence, my common sense, and my hard work ethics to bear on Newton's future. I want to build a sustainable future for our roads, for our schools, for our finances, and I want Newton to be a welcoming place for people of all ages and all income levels. I bring my knowledge of city planning and information technology to everything to bear on our Newton's problems. In my day job, I'm constantly thinking about how technology can enhance the services I provide, and this is the way I think about my work for you. I want to work together with all of you, your community, and my colleagues in government to build a welcoming and sustainable future for Newton. And I ask for your support, and I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you very much for coming.
The last time I was on this stage was for the 7th grade production of Midsummer's Night Dream. I was Don Juan. Hopefully I did better today than I did that day. I think we've seen today that there is a sharp division between Ms. LeBlanc and the two incumbents on the ideal role of residential development in our city going forward. And that kind of debate is healthy for a democracy, and it's important for Newton as we go into phase 2 of zoning reform. But phase 2 of zoning reform is going to require compromise. It's going to require moderation. It's going to require listening. And so I'm going to be a candidate who can do that, who can reach across both sides of this debate, to the people who who don't want to develop anywhere, who don't want any new residential development, to the people who want ample residential development. I will be a moderate. I'll be someone who can compromise. I have done it previously in my career in the military. I've done it in university. I've done it in politics. I will be a data-driven and pragmatic new leader from Ward 2, and I ask for your vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all this afternoon. It's so great to see so many families, children of all ages. It's wonderful. I believe that I've had an opportunity to share my thoughts and ideas relative to the future of Newton. And I just want to summarize. I'm committed to sustaining our fiscal stability, ensuring that our workers have the resources and environment to excel in their jobs, and creation of the diversity of housing opportunities while preserving the character and scale of our neighborhoods. Although I am a woman of modest means, I'm a woman who has a wealth of community supporters. I've said many times, it is the caliber of my supporters of which I am the proudest. So I ask that you please join this outstanding team of people here in Newton in voting for me, Marcia Johnson, on November 3rd.
Voshi again, thank you so much. And thank you so much, Mr. Yongki Deng, for this terrific opportunity. And as you can see, there are strong differences between myself and the incumbent opponents. I do thank them for their years of service, but I think this is an opportune time for new ideas, new voices, new faces on our Board of Aldermen that will soon be City Councilor. I am committed to keeping the Garden City the Garden City. I think Newton is a wonderful place to live, and I do not believe that residents want the drastic changes the incumbents stand for and have voted for. I want our schools, our services, and our infrastructure to be strong for the next generation of Newtonites, for my children, and for your children. I am a leader who listens, who is responsive, and who will face challenges with you. But you must vote on November 3rd to change the direction we're going in. Sheen, vote for me, Lynne Leblanc, on November 3rd. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marcia, Jacob, and Susan, for such an informative and persuasive statement and question and answer. And I think a great response was given to the challenging and a good question as well. So our next event will be the President's Volunteer Service Award ceremony. So if you have enough time to stay here, we will grant it.
Thank you.
So let's welcome our principal of Newton Chinese Language School, Dr. Lynne Leblanc.
All the elements of our campus. You're very welcome to our school. And I believe from today you will love our school. So we have Chinese class open to non-background Chinese families. You're very welcome to attend our class. The next event I'm going to move to the President's Award granting ceremony. So first I'm going to it's a great honor to read Barack Obama's congratulations letter to the White House, Washington. Congratulations on receiving the President's Volunteer Service Award. And thank you for helping to address the most pressing needs in your community and our country. In my inaugural address, I stated that we need a new era of responsibility. A recognition on the part of every American that we have duties to ourselves, our nation, and the world. These are duties that we do not grudgingly accept, but rather seek gladly form in the knowledge that there is nothing so satisfying the spirit than giving our all to a difficult task. Your volunteer service demonstrates the kind of commitment to your community that moves America a step closer to its great promise. Our nation faces the most challenging economic crisis in a lifetime. We are only the new American. We all work together. Introduce
对我这个那个套子打开弄半天，
must combine
怎么了？
make real lasting change so that each person has opportunities to fulfill his
呀，先拍吧，那样不行。
Well, government now open more opportunities for us to serve all communities. It is up to each of us to seize those opportunities. Thank you for your devotion to service and for doing all you can to achieve a better tomorrow for our great nation. Congratulations to all. So I'm going to call your name when you can come to the stage. And also, we welcome all the airlines and audience to come to the stage and the certificate and better to the recipients. Come on to the stage. So this is a picture of service. All these recipient states are access to service and user different activities. This is a singing hall activity, also some activity, also user service. So next I'm going to call your name. Any male, the gold medal, please come to the stage. Annie Yu. Christine Yao, gold medal. Claire Wong, gold medal. Helen Dong. Gold medal. Tinny Zhang. Gold medal. Congratulations. Maggie Wei. Maggie Wei is the gold medal of next one is Nancy Lee. Congratulations, gold medal. Tiffany Tang. Gold medal, congratulations. William Wong. Gold medal, congratulations. Winnie Lee. Gold medal, congratulations. The last one, the gold medal is Regina Yu. She's not here. Right? Regina Yu. Okay. Congratulations to all the present volunteers award winners. We hope this program will continue. Thank you all, and to come to our school. Our student center is always open to everybody. Thank you very much.